Welcome back to another incredible story that shows how life's most powerful moments often come when we least expect them. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from today. Now, let's dive into a tale that proves some connections transcend time and fame. In the quiet halls of West River Elementary School in Wilmington, North Carolina, where morning sunlight filtered through windows that had witnessed decades of young dreams, Mrs. Grace Williams was preparing for what she thought would be just another ordinary day. At 84 years old, she had long since retired as principal, but her connection to the school remained strong enough that she still visited regularly, helping current principal Dr. Amanda Foster with various programs she'd started decades ago. The morning had started like any other, with Mrs. Williams slowly making her way through the familiar corridors, her walker adorned with children's artwork from grateful students. Her silver hair was neatly styled, her clothes pressed and proper, old habits from 40 years of running the school. The sounds of children's laughter echoed through the halls, a symphony she had conducted for so many years. David Martinez, the school's long-serving maintenance supervisor, watched her with quiet respect as she made her daily rounds. He remembered all the stories about her tenure, especially those about a certain tall, energetic boy who would become one of the greatest athletes in history. But today, neither of them knew that the past was about to walk through the front door. Jenny Chen, the school secretary, had noticed something different that morning. There had been unusual calls, mysterious arrangements, and stern instructions about security. But even she couldn't have guessed what was about to unfold. Mrs. Williams paused near the trophy case, as she did every morning. Among the sporting achievements and academic awards, there was a faded photograph that always caught her eye, a young boy with an unmistakable smile and determination in his eyes. She remembered that smile, remembered the countless times she'd called that young Michael Jordan into her office, not for trouble, but because she saw something special in him that needed nurturing. Coach Peter Richardson, now in his mid-70s but still volunteering at the school's basketball program, often said that Mrs. Williams had a gift for seeing potential in children long before they saw it in themselves. Today, that gift would be remembered in a way none of them expected. Rebecca Jordan, Michael's daughter-in-law, had spent weeks planning this moment in secret. She knew the impact Mrs. Williams had had on her father-in-law's life, though he spoke of it rarely and always with a certain reverence in his voice. The old principal had been more than an authority figure. She had been a guiding light during those crucial early years. The school halls were quieter than usual that morning. Dr. Foster had managed to keep the real reason under wraps, telling staff it was just a routine visit from the district superintendent. But there was an energy in the air, an anticipation that couldn't be explained by a simple administrative visit. Mrs. Williams made her way to the library, where she often spent her mornings helping young students with their reading. The room smelled of books and possibility, just as it had during her years as principal. She settled into her favorite chair, the one by the window where the morning light made reading easier for her aging eyes. Thomas Wright, the school's current basketball coach, had been acting strangely all morning, checking his phone repeatedly and glancing at the clock. He knew something the others didn't, that the greatest player to ever grace a basketball court was about to return to his elementary school roots. The children in the library that morning noticed Mrs. Williams seemed more reflective than usual. As she helped young Katie Martinez with her reading, her mind kept drifting to years past, to a time when a young Michael Jordan would sprint through these very halls, his energy barely contained by the school's walls. Sandra Phillips, the school counselor, had heard all the stories about Mrs. Williams and Michael Jordan. How she'd recognized his competitive spirit not as a problem to be solved, but as a fire to be focused. How she'd channel his endless energy into productive directions, laying the groundwork for what would become an unparalleled drive for excellence. Outside the school, Lisa Anderson, a local reporter, waited patiently in her car, having received a tip about a special visitor. She'd been told to keep the information strictly confidential, understanding that this moment needed to unfold naturally, without the chaos of media attention. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows through the library windows. Mrs. Williams helped another student, young Marcus Thompson, with his mathematics, remembering how she used to use basketball statistics to help a young Michael Jordan engage with numbers. Some teaching methods she believed were timeless. Rachel Foster, the principal's assistant, moved through the halls with barely contained excitement. She had helped coordinate this surprise, working with Rebecca Jordan to ensure everything would be perfect. The weight of keeping such a monumental secret had been challenging, but she knew it would be worth it. As the clock approached 10 in the morning, Mrs. Williams heard a commotion in the hallway. At first, she assumed it was just the normal buzz of school life, until she saw Jenny Chen's face appear at the library door, her expression a mix of excitement and emotion. The air in the school seemed to change, as if the building itself recognized the significance of what was about to happen. The familiar halls that had witnessed thousands of children grow and learn were about to host a reunion decades in the making. Through the library windows, Mrs. Williams could see several dark SUVs pulling into the school parking lot. There was something familiar about the energy building in the air. It reminded her of those days long ago when a young boy's potential seemed to fill every room he entered. Coach Richardson had positioned himself near the front entrance, ostensibly checking the bulletin board but really waiting to witness a moment he knew would become part of the school's legend. He remembered the stories Mrs. Williams used to tell about young Michael's early days, about seeing greatness in a child who was still finding his way. The library had grown quiet, the children somehow sensing that something important was about to happen. Mrs. Williams sat in her chair, her hands folded in her lap, unaware that she was about to experience one of the most memorable moments of her long career in education. David Martinez had made sure the hallway floors were extra shiny that morning, though he hadn't been told why. Now, as he saw the vehicles parking outside, he understood. Some moments deserved a proper setting, and this would be one of them. The morning light streamed through the windows, creating a natural spotlight in the library. Mrs. Williams adjusted her glasses, preparing to help another student with their reading, unaware that she was about to receive the thank you of a lifetime. In the quiet of that ordinary morning, as the school went about its daily routine, none of the students or staff could have guessed that they were about to witness a moment that would remind everyone about the lasting impact a dedicated educator can have on a young life. The stage was set for a reunion that would prove that success isn't just measured in championships and awards, but in remembering and honoring those who helped shape our earliest steps toward greatness. And through those school doors, a legend was about to walk back into the past, carrying with him a gratitude that had waited decades to be expressed. The moment Michael Jordan stepped out of the lead SUV, time seemed to slow down at West River Elementary. Even at 61, his presence commanded attention, his 6 feet 6 inches frame carrying the same graceful confidence that had dominated basketball courts worldwide. He wore a tailored charcoal gray suit that spoke of success, but his eyes held something deeper, a hint of emotion that even his famous competitive intensity couldn't mask. Behind him, his son Jeffrey emerged from the same vehicle, carrying a large leather portfolio that seemed to hold something special. They exchanged a knowing look, both understanding the significance of what was about to unfold. This wasn't about Michael Jordan the basketball legend or Michael Jordan the businessman. This was about Michael Jordan the former student, returning to thank someone who had seen his potential long before the world did. Jenny Chen's hands trembled slightly as she texted Dr. Foster. "They're here." The current principal had orchestrated this moment carefully, ensuring that Mrs. Williams would be in the library, her favorite spot in the school, where she still volunteered 3 days a week helping children with their reading. Coach Richardson stood straighter as Jordan approached the entrance, remembering all the stories he'd heard about the young Michael who used to race through these halls. The maintenance supervisor, David Martinez, couldn't help but smile, knowing his freshly polished floors would now be part of a moment that would become school legend. As Jordan walked through the front doors, the familiar scent of school hallways brought back a flood of memories. His expression softened as he passed the old trophy case, pausing briefly to look at the faded photograph Mrs. Williams still gazed at each morning. For a moment, he was that young boy again, full of energy and dreams that seemed impossible to everyone except his elementary school principal. Rachel Foster, the principal's assistant, had carefully cleared the hallways, but a few students peeked around corners, their young eyes wide with wonder. To them, Michael Jordan was an almost mythical figure, someone they knew from their parents' stories and viral clips. But today, he was walking their halls, proving that legends could come from anywhere, even their own school. Jordan's footsteps echoed through the corridor as he approached the library. Jeffrey walked beside him, matching his father's purposeful stride. The portfolio he carried contained something that had taken months to prepare, a gesture that would prove some debts of gratitude can never fully be repaid, but must still be acknowledged. Sandra Phillips, the school counselor, watched from her office doorway, understanding the deeper significance of this moment. In an age of quick fame and forgotten mentors, here was one of the world's most successful athletes returning to remember and honor one of his earliest supporters. Inside the library, Mrs. Williams was helping young Marcus Thompson sound out a particularly challenging word, unaware that her quiet morning was about to transform into something extraordinary. The sunlight streaming through the windows created a natural spotlight, as if the universe itself was setting the stage for what was about to unfold. The library door opened quietly, and Dr. Foster entered first, her face composed but her eyes bright with anticipation. "Mrs. Williams," she said softly, "there's someone here to see you." When Michael Jordan stepped into the library, the air seemed to change. Mrs. Williams looked up from her book, her glasses perched on the end of her nose, and for a moment, time stood still. In her eyes, you could see the memories flooding back of a young boy with unlimited potential, of countless conversations in her office, of small moments of guidance that had helped shape a legend. "Mrs. Williams," Jordan's deep voice carried across the room, somehow both powerful and gentle. "It's been a long time." The retired principal's hands trembled slightly as she put down her book. Her voice, when it came, was clear despite her age. "Michael," she said, and in that one word was 40 years of pride, memories, and emotion. Jordan crossed the room in a few long strides, but his movement was unhurried, respectful. The children in the library watched in awe as one of the greatest athletes in history knelt down beside their beloved Mrs. Williams's chair, meeting her at eye level with a warmth that transcended his superstar status. "You probably don't remember," Jordan began, his voice carrying an unusual note of vulnerability, "but you used to tell me something when I was a student here." He paused, emotion briefly overtaking his famous composure. "You said that height might make a basketball player, but character makes a person." Mrs. Williams's eyes glistened with tears as she nodded. "I remember, Michael. I remember everything about that energetic young boy who couldn't sit still but had such dreams in his eyes." Jeffrey approached with the portfolio, handling it with obvious care. The library had grown completely silent, even the youngest children somehow understanding they were witnessing something special. "You saw something in me when I was just a kid running these halls," Jordan continued, his voice steady but filled with meaning. "You didn't just see what I was, you saw what I could become. And you never let me settle for less than my best." David Martinez had moved to the library doorway, drawn by the power of the moment. In all his years at the school, he had never seen anything quite like this, a living legend paying homage to one of the quiet heroes of education. Mrs. Williams reached out a slightly trembling hand to touch Jordan's arm, as if confirming he was really there. "You did all the work, Michael," she said softly. "I just helped point the way." Jordan shook his head, a smile warming his famous features. "You did more than that, Mrs. Williams. You laid the foundation. Every time I faced a challenge, every time I had to dig deeper to find another level, I remembered what you taught me about character and perseverance." Jeffrey stepped forward, opening the portfolio. Inside was something that had taken months to create, a unique tribute that would ensure Mrs. Williams's impact would be remembered for generations to come. Rachel Foster discreetly wiped away a tear as she watched from near the door. This wasn't just a former student thanking a teacher. This was a reminder of the profound impact educators can have on young lives. The morning sun continued to stream through the library windows, illuminating this unexpected reunion. The children watched, wide-eyed, as their everyday reality merged with living history. Here was proof that the dreams they harbored, the potential their teachers saw in them, could lead to extraordinary things. Lisa Anderson, the reporter, stood quietly in the background, her notebook forgotten in her hands. Some moments didn't need documentation. They needed to be experienced, to be felt, to remind everyone present about the power of recognition and gratitude. Coach Richardson thought about all the young athletes he'd worked with over the years, wondering which of them might return someday to remember and thank those who helped shape their journey. This moment was more than a reunion. It was a reminder that success isn't just about individual achievement, but about recognizing and honoring those who helped pave the way. The library, usually a place of quiet study, had become a sanctuary of memory and gratitude. The bookshelves that had witnessed countless young minds discovering new worlds now witnessed something equally magical, the return of one of their own, coming back to honor a mentor who had helped make his impossible dreams possible. As Jordan prepared to reveal what the portfolio contained, the atmosphere in the library crackled with anticipation. This wasn't just about what was in the folder, it was about what it represented. It was about acknowledging that even the greatest journeys begin with someone believing in you, guiding you, helping you see your own potential. The morning had transformed from ordinary to extraordinary, reminding everyone present that some bonds transcend time and fame, that gratitude has no expiration date, and that the impact of a dedicated educator can echo through decades, touching not just one life but inspiring generations to come. As Jeffrey Jordan carefully opened the leather portfolio, Mrs. Williams leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on Michael's face rather than the contents. After 40 years in education, she had learned to read people better than papers, and what she saw in her former student's expression told her this was about much more than a simple thank you. "Mrs. Williams," Michael began, his voice carrying that familiar intensity that had commanded basketball courts worldwide, but now softened with emotion. "When I was here, you always told us that education was about more than just learning facts, it was about building futures. Today, I want to make sure your legacy of building futures continues." From the portfolio, Jeffrey extracted a document bound in blue leather, embossed with gold lettering. The sunlight streaming through the library windows caught the golden text, making it shimmer, "The Grace Williams Future Leaders Scholarship Foundation." Mrs. Williams's hand flew to her heart as Michael continued. "This foundation will provide full college scholarships to 100 students from West River Elementary every year. But not just based on grades or basketball skills, based on the same qualities you always looked for in your students: character, determination, and the courage to dream big." The library remained absolutely silent, the weight of the moment holding everyone in its grip. Dr. Foster, standing near the door, found herself gripping Rachel's hand, both women understanding they were witnessing something extraordinary. "The foundation is being established with an initial endowment of $50 million, Jordan explained, his voice steady but filled with purpose. "Every year, it will ensure that kids from this school, kids who might otherwise never get the chance, will have the opportunity to pursue their dreams, just like you helped me pursue mine." Sandra Phillips, the school counselor, couldn't help but think of all the talented students she'd seen struggle with limited opportunities. This foundation would change lives for generations to come. But Jordan wasn't finished. He reached into the portfolio again, extracting a second document. "We're also establishing the Grace Williams Excellence in Education Center right here at West River Elementary. It will provide advanced learning resources, after-school programs, and specialized sports facilities, everything you always wished you had when you were principal." Mrs. Williams's eyes glistened with tears as Jordan continued to outline his tribute to her influence. The center would include a state-of-the-art library, STEM laboratories, and a basketball court where young athletes could develop both their skills and their character. "But the most important part," Jordan said, his voice taking on an even more personal tone, "is this." He pulled out a framed letter, carefully preserved despite its age. It was a handwritten note Mrs. Williams had given him in elementary school, encouraging him after a particularly difficult day. "You wrote this to me when I was struggling with math," Jordan explained, holding the letter where she could see it. "You said, 'Michael, the measure of a person isn't in their natural talents, but in how hard they're willing to work to improve.' I've kept this all these years because it taught me something crucial, that greatness isn't given, it's earned." Coach Richardson moved closer to the window, trying to hide his own emotion. He had seen countless motivational speeches in his career, but this was different. This was raw, genuine gratitude being expressed by one of the world's most successful athletes to the educator who had helped shape his character. Jenny Chen, who had slipped into the library to witness the moment, found herself thinking about all the small interactions between teachers and students that happened every day. How many of those moments were secretly shaping future leaders, future champions, future changemakers? The foundation will be overseen by a board of educators, Jordan continued. People who share your vision of education as a tool for transformation. And every year, one outstanding teacher will receive the Grace Williams Excellence in Education Award, including a substantial grant for their classroom and professional development. David Martinez watched from his position near the door as Mrs. Williams tried to absorb the magnitude of what was happening. In all his years at the school, he had never seen the composed former principal so moved. "But there's one more thing," Jordan said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, worn object, a detention slip from his elementary school days. "You wrote something on this that changed my perspective forever. Instead of just noting my disruption of class, you wrote, 'Michael has more energy than the room can hold. Our challenge is not to contain it, but to channel it.'" The children in the library listened intently, understanding they were witnessing something important, even if they couldn't fully grasp its significance. They saw how their beloved Mrs. Williams's hands trembled as she touched the old detention slip, how tears fell freely down her cheeks. "You taught me that what others saw as problems could be transformed into strengths," Jordan continued. "You showed me that discipline wasn't about punishment, but about focus. Every championship, every success, every achievement, they all trace back to the lessons I learned right here from you." Jeffrey stood quietly beside his father, watching the interaction with deep respect. He had grown up hearing stories about Mrs. Williams, about how she had helped shape his father's character long before the world knew Michael Jordan's name. "The foundation will ensure that your approach to education, seeing potential where others see problems, fostering character alongside achievement, believing in dreams that seem impossible, will continue to change lives for generations to come," Jordan explained. Rachel Foster had begun taking notes, understanding that this moment would need to be documented for the school's history. This wasn't just about a generous donation, it was about acknowledging the profound impact that dedicated educators have on their students' lives. Mrs. Williams finally found her voice, though it quavered with emotion. "Michael," she said softly, "I always knew you would do great things. But this is about helping others do great things too. That's the most wonderful tribute you could give." Jordan nodded, understanding perfectly what she meant. "That's exactly what you taught us, Mrs. Williams. Success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about lifting others up along the way." The morning sun had risen higher now, its light filling the library with a warm glow. The bookshelves that had witnessed countless hours of learning now witnessed something equally valuable: the power of gratitude expressed through action. Lisa Anderson, the reporter, realized she was witnessing something that transcended the usual celebrity charity announcement. This was a deeply personal testament to the lasting impact of dedicated educators, a reminder that behind every success story are often unsung heroes who helped shape the path. "The Foundation's first scholarships will be awarded this spring," Jordan explained, "and we want you to be part of the selection committee. These kids should understand that their opportunity comes from someone who spent her life believing in the potential of every student who walked through these doors." The children in the library, who had been sitting quietly throughout the presentation, began to understand that they were part of something special. Their small elementary school was being transformed into a beacon of educational opportunity, all because one principal had believed in a young boy's potential many years ago. As the morning continued to unfold, the impact of Jordan's gesture rippled through the school. This wasn't just about money or facilities, it was about recognizing and honoring the profound influence that dedicated educators have on young lives. It was about ensuring that Mrs. Williams's legacy of believing in potential, fostering character, and encouraging dreams would continue to shape futures for generations to come. The library, usually a quiet place of study and reflection, had become a sacred space where gratitude, legacy, and hope intertwined. In this moment, everyone present understood that true greatness isn't just about personal achievement, it's about remembering and honoring those who helped make that achievement possible. As the magnitude of Michael Jordan's gesture settled over the library, Mrs. Williams slowly rose from her chair, her walker forgotten in the emotion of the moment. With the same grace she had shown through decades of educating young minds, She reached out and took both of Jordan's hands in hers. "Michael," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years of wisdom, "when you were a student here, I always told you that true success isn't measured by what you achieve, but by what you inspire others to achieve. Today, you've proven that you learned that lesson better than I could have ever hoped." The morning sun streaming through the library windows seemed to glow brighter, as if nature itself was acknowledging the power of this moment. Jordan, the man known for his unshakable composure on the basketball court, felt tears forming in his own eyes. "Everything I achieved," he responded, his voice carrying an unusual tremor, "started with someone believing in me. You didn't just see what I was, Mrs. Williams, you saw what I could become. This foundation is about giving other kids that same chance." Jeffrey Jordan stepped forward, holding another document from the portfolio. "There's one more thing, Dad," he said softly, understanding the significance of this final reveal. Jordan nodded, taking the paper from his son. "Mrs. Williams," he continued, "the school board has approved one more tribute. From this day forward, the West River Elementary School Library will be known as the Grace Williams Learning Center. Because every child who walks through these doors should know about the educator who understood that true teaching is about more than just books, it's about believing in potential." Dr. Foster moved forward, carrying a small covered object. As she removed the cloth, it revealed a bronze plaque that would be mounted at the library entrance. The inscription read, "Dedicated to Grace Williams, who taught us that education is not about filling minds, but about opening hearts to possibility." The children in the library, who had been sitting in awed silence, suddenly burst into spontaneous applause. They might not have fully understood the magnitude of the financial gesture, but they understood the emotion they were witnessing. They understood that their beloved Mrs. Williams, who helped them with their reading every week, had done something extraordinary for someone who had become extraordinary. Sandra Phillips, watching from near the biography section, thought about all the current students who struggled with self-doubt. Now they would have living proof that greatness could emerge from these very halls, nurtured by educators who saw beyond present circumstances to future potential. "But the foundation isn't just about providing opportunities," Jordan continued, his composure returning as he outlined his vision. "It's about continuing your legacy of character education. Every scholarship recipient will be paired with a mentor, someone who embodies the principles you taught us: dedication, integrity, and the courage to dream big." David Martinez, still watching from his post near the door, noticed how the morning light created a kind of halo effect around Mrs. Williams and Jordan as they stood together. It seemed fitting, a visual representation of how knowledge and guidance could illuminate paths to greatness. The Grace Williams Future Leaders Program will focus on more than just academics or athletics, Jordan explained. It will emphasize community service, leadership development, and the kind of character building that you always prioritized. Because you taught us that true success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about lifting others up along the way. Jenny Chen had begun taking photographs with her phone, knowing that this moment needed to be preserved. Not for social media or publicity, but for the school's archives, a testament to the lasting impact of dedicated educators. Each year, Jordan continued, the foundation will also fund professional development for teachers, because you always said that great teachers never stop learning. We'll bring in experts, create workshops, and provide resources to help educators continue your legacy of seeing and nurturing potential in every student. Rachel Foster was already imagining the impact this would have on the school community. The resources, the opportunities, the message it sent to every child who might doubt their potential, all of it would transform lives for generations to come. Mrs. Williams, still holding Jordan's hands, spoke again, her voice stronger now. "Michael, do you remember what I used to tell you about ripples in a pond?" Jordan nodded, a smile spreading across his face as she continued, "Every action creates ripples that touch distant shores we may never see. Today, you've created ripples that will transform lives far into the future." The children watched in fascination as the greatest basketball player in history listened with the same respect and attention they gave Mrs. Williams during their reading sessions. It was a powerful reminder that greatness doesn't diminish gratitude, it enhances it. "I remember every word you taught us," Jordan replied. You said education isn't just about learning facts, it's about learning who you can become. This foundation is about giving other kids the chance to discover who they can become. Coach Richardson, thinking about his current students, realized he would now have a powerful story to tell them about the importance of character and gratitude. This wasn't just about Michael Jordan, the basketball legend. This was about Michael Jordan, the student who never forgot those who helped him along the way. Lisa Anderson, the reporter, had long since stopped taking notes. Some stories wrote themselves, and this one was about something more meaningful than just a generous donation. It was about the lasting bond between a dedicated educator and a student who had never forgotten the lessons she taught him. "There's one more thing," Jordan said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small keychain with a tarnished basketball charm. "You gave this to me after my first basketball game for the school team. You said, it's not about whether you win or lose, it's about how much heart you put into the game. I've carried it with me ever since." Mrs. Williams's eyes filled with tears again as she recognized the small token she had given to a young boy so many years ago. She had forgotten about the keychain, but not about the conversation that accompanied it, one of many moments where she had tried to teach her students about the importance of character over achievement. "Today," Jordan continued, "every scholarship recipient will receive a similar keychain along with their acceptance letter. Not because it's valuable, but because it represents something priceless, the belief that someone sees their potential and believes in their future." The morning had grown late, but no one in the library moved to leave. They all understood they were witnessing something rare and precious, a moment where gratitude, success, and legacy combined to create something that would impact generations to come. "Mrs. Williams," Jordan concluded, his voice carrying both strength and emotion, "you taught us that education is about more than just preparing for a career, it's about preparing for life. This foundation is about ensuring your wisdom, your belief in potential, and your commitment to character education will continue to change lives long into the future." As the sun reached its zenith outside, casting its warmest light through the library windows, those present understood they had witnessed more than just a generous gift. They had seen a powerful reminder that true success includes remembering and honoring those who helped make it possible. The story of Michael Jordan's return to his elementary school, and his tribute to the principal who had helped shape his character, would soon spread far beyond West River Elementary. It would remind everyone that behind every success story are educators who believed, guided, and inspired, and that gratitude, expressed through action, has the power to transform lives for generations to come. What's the most meaningful way someone has shown you gratitude? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that remind us about the power of remembering and honoring those who helped shape our paths.